Welcome to The Saint and the Singer.
Were you going to clap? We have not done this for a long time. I've realized that.
Welcome to The Saint and the Singer.
I'm the saint.
And I'm the singer. And we're probably still here to pump you up.
Spiritually.
Oh, boy. We're back. And before we get started with whatever nonsense we're going to have here, little housekeeping.
Okay.
We've had some conversations about whether or not, A, we're going to keep doing this, and B, if we are, how we're going to do it. And I think we have decided, if it's okay, that we're going to take and do seasons with this thing. So we found the last couple of years that basically September through the end of the year is just
Crazy.
cray-cray, okay? So we have non-digital worlds to deal with, and you're the pastor of a church, I'm a banker, and then you throw in, quite selfishly, deer hunting, and
It's a holiday.
all of the holidays and all of the stuff, and we took all that time off this year, and I think I feel like that's probably what we need to do every year. So we'll probably maybe from now on start back sometime in January perhaps, and then go through the first, the end of August or something, and then we'll take our little break and come back hopefully refreshed. Do we feel refreshed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do, actually.
Yeah. Somewhat. I would like to have thought that by the time we got back, I'd have a whole huge list of things I wanted to talk about, but nah, still blank.
Yeah, I think
For
we
the
got
most
some things,
part.
though. We got some things.
Yeah, we do.
We have
Actually,
some
I
ideas.
put all of my stuff in the wrong place. Do you think you could maybe hand me my thingy without touching all that and making all the noise? You're the best. You're my best friend here at
Aw.
church in this room today.
That was oddly specific.
Well, I feel like in praise and prayer, we should be as specific as we can possibly be.
Okay, that's good.
So what's been going on since September for you?
Well, deer season.
Deer season, success, failure.
Success, yes. We had deer camp, and so
We did have deer camp.
you and I and the youth pastor all got bucks, so that was good.
Yeah, we did.
So since September, we also had Thanksgiving. We had Christmas, where we had 155,
Five.
probably more like 160 because our youth pastor can't count. Yes, Ben, I'm talking to you.
Well,
No, in his defense, he said, I'm pretty sure I missed 5 little kids that I couldn't see their heads.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Well, and youth pastoring and math don't necessarily have to go
They don't
together.
have to, but-
It's fine.
So we had 160 in our first service, and then we had 37
Yep.
at our midnight service.
That was a good day.
That was a really
That
good
was
day.
a long day because
it was a very long day.
once we got home, I actually had all of my people at home at the same time, since Ryan is now working nights, and then Turner was having to get up and get up in the morning and go to work. So we did our Christmas at night. Well, at morning when we got home after the midnight Christmas service. So
Not us.
it was awesome. But it was a beautiful night. It was a great night.
It
Loved
was
every minute
very
of it.
powerful. I think everybody I had several people tell me that the early service was one of the most beautiful services they had because we had a choir,
Yep.
we had a jazz band, we had the praise band, and all of it came together, and it was very beautiful. And also children acting out the story
It was
was
awesome.
great. So it was a very powerful time. Then we came through the year, and so we finished off our Bible recap. So our church has read, many people in our church have read through the whole Bible.
Yep.
In some cases, that was their first time to ever read, many passages, and definitely in the Old Testament that they had never gotten through before. So then in January, we started a new series on John Mark Comer's Practicing the Way, and we have now talked about 4 weeks of Sabbath.
Yep.
So, and we've already talked about that in our podcast about the value of Sabbath, both stopping, resting, delighting, and worship. And here we are. Now we are already in the
Starting prayer? Is that where
we're
going
going to start
next?
prayer this weekend. Yeah. But here we are in February now. It's already, can you believe that?
I cannot.
No, I know it's crazy.
No, it's
So
been a whirlwind. So
it has.
yeah, my fall sounds suspiciously similar to yours with deer camp, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all the stuff. In all that, part of a team prepping to change the name of the place I work, which has been really cool. Like I'm really excited about what happened, but you don't really think about like what is required to change the name of something and then gather all of the things where the old name was and actually identify where all the old name is and then disseminate out the new information. And I've I've spent a lifetime in meetings the last few months.
Lucky you.
But look at where it got us. It was good.
Yes.
And I sound like I'm taking credit for any of that. I just went to meetings. I'm not sure I'm responsible for any of that. But
Were they board meetings?
they were board meetings. No, they weren't. But they were meetings. They were definitely meetings. I go to a lot of meetings. Meetings about meetings and then meetings about the meeting about the meeting. But okay. Yep. And I too have not heard "He's Where the Joy Is" in a month and a half.
Is that joyful?
That's might be. Yes, I did enjoy the Bible recap. I did have a problem with shoehorning in "He's Where the Joy Is" every single day, including the days where we're talking about
Sodom and
Gomorrah, Job's family all being killed,
Revelation,
all of Revelation. I mean, half 1/3 of the population dies a brutal death, and he's where the joy is.
the beast came out of the water, but he's where the joy is.
Yeah. And you know what? She's amazing.
No,
she's reached way more people with her stuff than we have.
Yes.
So can't really throw too many stones.
We are truly just joking, and it's not serious.
And it really was a great experience. But I think that was my 4th or 5th time in a row to do a read through the Bible in a year. And I'm not doing that this year.
I'm not either.
I'm doing a little bit more of a focused study. We have, I don't know, I better not say we. I discovered through some other podcasts the beauty of the harmony of the Gospels, and so I am reading through that at least for I don't know. I figure it'll take me a couple more months to get through it. I'm kind of taking it at a more pinpoint pace where I'm reading through a story in Jesus's life. And so if you don't know what the harmony of the Gospels is, it basically takes Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which are the synoptic Gospels, and it reads them all side by side in columns. And so and it's in chronological order, so to speak. So it puts the whole teachings of Jesus and his travels and all of that, or at least it attempts to. I can't really speak to the veracity of that, but it takes it from day one when Jesus enters the building through his last day in ministry, and then it lines them up in columns so that you'll read a passage in Matthew, and then you read the exact same passage in Mark, and then you read the exact same passage, or a correlating passage anyway, in Luke, and you see how they're extremely similar. You'll see where one of the authors puts a little bit different spin on the same story, depending on who their intended audience was, whether it's the Jews, the Greeks, or the Romans, and you can tell they are telling the exact same story, but how they're tailoring it to their audience, which I've really found that fascinating.
Yes.
It's pretty cool to see all that stuff, and you can see what Luke thinks is important in that story and versus what Matthew and Mark do, and the columns don't all the stories don't all be equal. You'll have, half a page will be Matthew, and then Mark will be here, here, and here, and there's blanks in between, and then Luke will be down here. And so they're telling the same story, but focusing on details that they feel like matter the most to their audience, and then whatever their purpose was for telling the story as well. So Matthew's got an audience and a purpose. Mark has a different audience and a different purpose and focus in telling the story, and Luke and everybody.
What are their purposes?
I knew you were going to ask that. Matthew was writing to the Jews, and so his main purpose appears to be to convince the Jews that Jesus is the Messiah they've been waiting on for hundreds of years. And so he points to the Jewishness of Jesus, and he seems to kind of focus a lot on, at least so far, the miracles that Jesus did that prove he's the Messiah. Mark and Luke. Sorry.
So really, what Matthew is pointing out is that Jesus is the second Moses.
Yes.
And you'll look at that and you'll see Moses.
And the second Adam.
Right. Yeah, but you'll see like Mosaic or Moses stories in what miracles he picks out. He is the son of David.
Yep.
And as you said, he is the Messiah.
Yeah, and you even read that. What was interesting was in the very beginning, you get to read the Matthew genealogy and the Luke genealogy, and they're different. And I don't know. I don't claim to be a scholar, but people I listen to are talking about how Matthew's genealogy is actually pointing back to that fact, and it shows the lineage of Mary's side of the family.
No,
and
Matthew is Joseph. Yeah, you're correct.
I got it backwards. Right.
Matthew is the legal
right
lineage, because it goes through Joseph's line. But
That's
Joseph's
right.
line actually cannot be
the king. So we're getting into the weeds already.
And then Luke's line is actually from Mary's.
Yep.
And so that's why it's from a different son. It's actually from Nathan.
Yep.
Where he could still continue that idea of being, king through that line.
That's right, because of the whole cursed kingdom on Joseph's side. And so I'm just finished the Beatitudes. That's how slow I'm going. So I'm on the Sermon on the Mount right now. And it is pretty interesting to see how Luke, because I think Luke comes along the latest, right, in the story. You can tell he's taken details from others and added his own flair to it, because he's interviewed people who were there and he's gotten more of the story. And so his stuff seems to be way more detailed and less sort of picked through than the others too.
Luke is trying to do a Greco philosophical kind of historical.
He's trying to take the other three who each have their own purposes and then smash all those together to do one sort of overlying story that's for the Jews and the Gentiles and everybody else. So pretty cool read. I had never read something like that before, and I do find it just there. Even if you just think about like what perspective each one of them's writing for, how different things occur to them. But
it's interesting because Mark actually, according to Pastor Robbie Gallatry, that it actually has the longest accounts, but it has the least amount of words. It's the least amount of interactions. But every time he does one, he adds in more detail. That little light just turned off. It's okay.
That's Karen. If you heard her, I'm pretty sure
Karen.
You might have.
But
she's the backbone of our church.
Yeah, that's truth. But Mark was writing to the Romans, and he was showing that Jesus is King.
Yep.
So.
Yep. You got Jesus is God, Jesus is King, and then Jesus is the whole package. And they've kind of left John out for the most part, but I think
John's writing for a different purpose.
Yeah. And so he hasn't come into the fold yet. So
now, I have I have one that actually has John in there chronologically also. Some of the John stories. But John is really writing not so much chronologically as he is thematically.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah, he's proving that Jesus is God.
he is proving that Jesus is the Son of God, and he is divine, and he's actually addressing the Gnostic ideology that was starting to develop, or the Nicolaitans that were kind of coming in, that had the idea of Balaam.
He's also trying to prove that he runs faster than Peter.
That is true. That's probably my absolute favorite. I mean, you got to admit, when Peter read that, when he was like looking at him, like when John got there, he's like, "Really, John?
Yeah.
Really? You had to put that in there?"
That is funny.
That is absolutely
It's very,
hysterical.
very
I mean, and
funny.
there are some great TikTok videos of that. You know,
I'm sure.
there are.
I'm sure.
But
Okay. Well, we've got a lot going on here at Connection Point Church as well. We're talking about us, but boy, howdy, do we have a lot going on here. We have had some seriously wild Wednesday nights.
we had 80 people here tonight.
Was it 80?
We fed 75, I believe, and then we had about 5 more come in afterwards.
And we're the last 2 Sundays.
We had
we've
90
had
people.
over 90
we had
here.
at least 90 people on church on Sunday.
Yeah. So we are already approaching running out of room in some certain spaces of our church.
We have more room in our sanctuary, but we are running out of classrooms space.
And eating. I mean,
And
tonight
eating.
people were eating in classrooms.
I was eating in a classroom
Yeah.
with about 9 other people.
Yeah. It's awesome.
It's a great problem to have, but and this last weekend, we and the elders and the deacons, the leadership of the church, spent a weekend kind of retreat. The retreat got snowed out, so we ended up having it here at the church. But that was actually very beautiful because we were able to have worship on Friday night. Very intimate worship service that was very impactful, and then we had the
Wish we
opportunity
could
to
translate that a little better to the sanctuary.
know.
That was pretty nice.
I guess we bring lamps in there.
Go back to candles.
Yeah, there you go. But we were able then to be able to pray over our facility and pray over one another in a beautiful, just kind of everyone goes and prays in different parts of the church and kind of walked around and asked for guidance and the Holy Spirit to lead us. And then on Saturday morning, we had a leadership training on what is the most important value. What is what kind of legacy are we leaving behind? And that was very important in the fact that we have to be rooted in the right thing, which is a good understanding of what God's word says.
Yep.
That is the foundation that we are rooted to, that God is who he says he is, that scripture is inspired by God, it is inerrant, and it is infallible and capable of being having errors. And then afterwards, we had a vision casting with
My head is
23
still
people.
spinning from that.
Yes,
Yep.
And we really wanted to lay down where is the Lord leading us, and so we laid out 10 years, 5 years, and 1 year. And I was a little surprised where the 10 years went. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. Now, I'm far enough away from it now.
I am too.
And have had enough time to think about it and really think there's probably not another way to really think about your long-term vision. You kind of have a crossroads there of, do you just want to build this behemoth in one place
Right.
and turn it into something that I don't think any of us intend it to be?
Because then you lose something.
Or do you grow this thing to capacity and then branch out,
Yeah.
and then branch out, and then branch out? So I don't know that we're ready to go into details, and I don't know that we should talk too much about the details on the podcast because our congregation hasn't even heard about it yet. So, but there was some pretty exciting conversation going on there.
I think we could talk about one thing, though. I think we can
Yeah,
talk about
sure.
the fact that we recognize that we're going to have to build some more infrastructure,
Yeah.
both in physical, building
yeah.
space, education wing, but also that we recognize that there are some areas where we have kind of dropped the ball.
Yeah.
And we have to really focus. In our meeting tomorrow night with the elders, that's one of the things that we're going to address is how are we going to pick up the pieces where we've kind of let things slide a little bit.
Yeah. We're going to have to kind of touch on, in some ways, like what is our approach to church discipline in a way.
Yeah,
I mean, we
and
know
even-
what Scripture says about
Sure.
it, right? We know what the real church discipline is, but How do you deal with things going on with people who are in servant roles or leadership roles that, don't rise to the same level of, having uh, an affair with your father's wife, like the guy in Corinth. But, how do we approach, like, what happens if someone's not kind of living up to their end of the bargain, but they're teaching a Sunday school class, or they're playing in the praise band, or they're serving communion, or they're doing this and doing this? Like, what? And that's just something that, quite frankly, we've spent so much time trying to figure out who and what we are as a church, that we just haven't had time to have those conversations yet.
Yeah.
And we've got all our bylaws, we've got all our stuff. It's time to start having those conversations. Now, the problem is, you may have people participating in roles right now that you could argue may or may not be qualified to do that right now. And then we have to deal with, well, we've asked them to be in those roles, not really thinking about the ramifications of that. How do we approach that situation? And then how do we, I think it's a lot easier to have the conversation about, okay, what are our standards of conduct for servants and leaders in the future? But how do we address things that, like you said, we've kind of dropped the ball on? Yeah. So there's some conversation that needs to be had about, how do we approach that? Of course, we want to approach it in truth and love, just like everything else.
But we have to do it in truth.
Yep.
And in love.
Yep.
And so we have to have a discussion on that, and we realized one of the things that we did change this year in our last elder meeting, which is something that I was excited to do, is that I felt like the last year and 4 months of the church before, in 2024, 2023, 24, and 25, we were really focusing on kind of getting things off the ground, trying to kind of roll, what are the policies that we need, so that we can, proceed forward, and things like that. It was the business aspect of it.
Yeah.
But what I realized was that our elder board didn't really have a whole lot of overseeing of the actual ministries,
The
spiritual
oversight,
aspect,
so to speak.
And so I one of the things that I suggested, and they all agreed, is that each person would be overseeing a ministry. One person oversees the women's ministry, another person is overseeing the men's ministry, and the youth ministry, and the worship and children's ministry, and that is allowing that not everybody just has to come to me, and I'm the sole person that everybody goes to.
Right.
And so on one hand, it takes some of that off of my plate, which is good. But another thing is that it allows the elders to actually be spiritual shepherds.
Yep. Which is what they're called.
Which is called to do.
Right? I mean,
it's not just a business meeting now;
Yep.
it's a spiritual meeting, and so they can say, "Hey, this is what we're doing in women's ministry, and this is what's going on in men's ministry. This is an area that that maybe we need to give a little bit, oversight here and a little bit help to, and this is another area that's going really well, and whatever."
Yeah.
But now it's not just all my.
But also think about the effect on the church's longevity there too,
Sure.
because not everything is dependent on you, and the elders are able to shepherd as
Sure.
well. So we're sharing the load in some ways, but we're also, each new elder gets to come in and share the load. So there's a succession, so to speak,
Yeah.
of shepherding or leadership that a lot, I'm not going to say a lot of churches, but there's a danger for a church to put all of their eggs in one basket here.
Sure.
And then when you're gone, nobody knows how to do anything.
Yep.
Or, eventually we're not going to be on this planet anymore. And if we want our church to continue after we're gone and not just be this weird novel thing that we did because we disagreed with something, but we didn't set it up to continue into the future, now you've got this succession of leadership that can weather that storm, find someone else that fits the mold, that knows the mission, that agrees with the mission, shares the vision, all of that sort of stuff. And I don't remember us having that discussion on that, but that's another great advantage to having that.
Absolutely.
Is that it shows the congregation that it's not just about the pastor too.
Right. That I think is one of the biggest things, that there are multiple leaders seeking the wisdom and the guidance of the Holy Spirit leading this church.
Yep. And what also came out of that meeting was something that was pretty exciting. Kind of alluded to it a minute ago, but it also is going to force us as a congregation, not just the leaders, but the congregation, to kind of rethink our vision as a church body.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we did talk about was training up those next generations to either be the people that go out and do the thing and to replace us. And so that's going to require a significant amount of effort from all of us. And we were kind of talking about this last night, Ben and I were, that it can't just be the church leadership that's going to be focusing on discipleship. It needs to be all the ministries. And, the women's ministry, I would argue, is already doing that through their study, through the word that they're doing. The men's group has been specifically studying discipleship for the last
17 weeks.
Yeah, so I was going to say not quite 6 months, but yeah, 4 or 5 months. And so I don't know if it's random or divine or if anybody was thinking about it, but those seeds have already been planted, and we're actually able to be watering those now instead of just starting to think about it. But we were talking about it's like the youth group's going to have a discipleship focus, which I would argue they already do.
I think they're on the plan.
Ben is very disciple focused. The children's ministry, the women's ministry, Women Moving Mountains, Bible 101, everything we do, the worship band, everything we do is going to have to be brought into that mindset of we are making disciples that are going to grow this place numerically, spiritually, the whole 9 yards, and have people ready to have that succession. And so we're doing Bible studies on discipleship. You're doing Bible 101, and that was kind of what I thought we would maybe talk about for the last few minutes of the podcast before we go home and crawl into our beds and wish we had gone home when our wives left. But why don't you start with what you're doing? And I am not leading a Bible study right now. I'm just participating in it. So I'll tell you what we did tonight.
I have started we call it Bible 101, and it's basically those questions that we all want to ask as new believers or younger. I use the word immature, not in a negative way, but just in that young faith, that shallower faith, and understanding. And asking those questions. So tonight was the first one, and we had several. Actually, it all ended up being gentlemen.
How many did you have?
There were 5 of us.
Okay, I think you'll have a 6th next week.
I think we will. I talked with that one too. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but the beauty of it is that we asked the question: why did Jesus have to die on the cross? Why was that? And so we had to kind of go back and look at, Genesis 3. The fall, and I talked about how Adam and Eve took the fruit from the tree without permission. They removed the knowledge of good and evil
on a hill in a garden.
In a garden, yeah. And then God placed the fruit of knowledge of good and evil back upon the tree in His Son.
On a hill in a garden.
Yeah. Yeah. True that.
Yeah.
But then we talked about the idea of, what is salvation, and we broke it down into justification and sanctification, and really looked at some of these words that we're talking about. What does it mean to be a believer? Because I think that 1 Corinthians 15:3 says that the most important thing that we have is that Christ died for us. That is the most important part of anything that we can give out. So that has to be foundational at the beginning. Christ thought you were worth dying for in your darkest moment.
Hmm.
So that's what we talked about. And then next week we're talking about why is the Bible reliable? That was the next question.
So I'm curious, did Jelly Roll come up in your conversation about sanctification and justification?
It did not,
It did
actually.
not.
No.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, but
That seems like what all anybody can talk about right now.
right, we did not actually end up talking about Jelly Roll. We kind of made it more personal and talked about our own self. You know,
okay.
like the example of if you tell your wife, or if your wife asks, "Does this dress make me look fat?"
Does this make my butt look big?
And if you say a white lie, or is that, is a sin, yeah. And that's worth, that a lamb had to die for that. If you think about it, in the ancient culture, had to die for sin.
So I heard something interesting, and it
Okay.
might have even been this morning regarding that. And I don't think this was the first time I'd heard this, but now that you're saying this, it kind of brings it back. And we're back to Galilee now. I was listening to their latest episode, and he was talking about in the Hebrew tradition, the 10 Commandments. There were only 3 of those commandments that were non-negotiable, and that the other ones there was an exemption for if your life or the life of your family was in danger. So would this fall under that exemption of if your wife asks you, does this make my butt look big, would you consider yourself maybe in physical danger and maybe it's okay to lie about it?
I'll use what Frank's answer was. The dress does not make you look fat.
Oh. Wow, that is truth without love. It's not the dress that makes you look fat.
It's not the dress that makes you look
I
fat.
thought that was pretty fascinating in
Yeah.
that. So, sorry. So you shall have no other God than me.
Yeah.
The murder was a non-negotiable, and the adultery was a non-negotiable. But the other ones were considered, like, if you were truly in danger, life or death situation, you could lie. And if you think about that, Abraham did that a couple of times.
He did.
You could dishonor your parents if, life or death. So there was all this stuff, and I don't know. The Bible doesn't say that anywhere
Yeah.
that I can see. So I don't know how I feel about that. But it just when you said that, it kind of brought that discussion up where at least we think about how they put so many fences around the law
Sure.
to keep them from sinning. This seems like the opposite of that. They're
Yeah.
making a loophole there, but their assertion was if, a guy's got his knife to your throat and he says, "Is this your wife?" and you say no, that's justifiable. But that's a bad example. But
No, but
are you hiding any Jews here?
Right.
I think that, in my opinion, that's a justifiable lie if the Nazis are knocking on the door.
Does it mean? Yeah, but
Is that a sin?
But I did know of a pastor that reportedly said yes, they're actually hiding under my table, and the Nazis laughed it off, thought he was joking,
And moved
on.
Yeah.
And had he said no, they may have said, "Well, we don't believe we're going to check anyways."
Yeah.
So the fact that he was truthful,
Yeah.
God protected it. So
I said, I don't know how I feel about that.
I know.
I did think that was interesting that they.
I'm not so sure
they
I
would
can. I don't know if I
allow
can go
that.
along with that necessarily. I don't know. That's a hard one. Would it be okay to covet your neighbor's wife or covet your neighbor's
Well,
stuff?
I was going to say
if-
the wife thing kind of goes back to the
but
adultery
covet your
part,
neighbor's
but-
stuff.
Yeah.
Is there a justifiable reason where you could covet your neighbor's stuff?
Well, I don't know how that would relate to life and death either, unless you're starving to death and your neighbor's got food. So
now you're stealing though. So
well, but covetousness leads to stealing at
Yeah.
some point, right? So I
don't know.
I don't know. We don't have to have this conversation now because
that's an interesting
You
one.
just said the
Right.
Does this dress make me look
Yeah,
fat? And I thought, oh, maybe that's an exemption if you feel like your life's in danger.
Well, we in our class did not take it that way.
Didn't go that way, huh?
We just said that all that all sin has different consequences. In that situation, you may be sleeping on the couch when your wife goes out in the dress, and
I think
some
I
little
just
kid
pretend
says,
I didn't
"You
hear
look
that
like
question."
a giant, like you're wearing a parachute or whatever." And you're like, "I think you said it made me look good." I said, But
I think I just pretend I don't hear that question.
I always say, that dress looks nice, but I like this one better.
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say what I would say. It would involve no dress at all. Do we cut that or leave that? I'm not sure.
You're the editor.
It's not lust if it's in my marriage, right?
The marriage bed is holy.
Okay. All right, so let's move on. So you
Yes.
guys, that's what you guys did today.
We talked about that.
Okay, so we continued this people of peace sort of study
Okay.
and discipleship, and we had talked, I'm going to say probably halfway through that study, so probably, I don't know, 8-9 weeks ago, about the Bible discovery method. And so tonight we broke off in groups to practice the Bible discovery method with varying levels of degrees of success. And for those of you who don't know, which I'm assuming is everybody other than people who've been in this Bible study, because I'd never heard of it before, the Discovery Bible method goes a little something like this. So you will pick a passage and you'll read it, and then both of you. So we'll say you and I are doing this together,
Sure.
and one of it's about discipling. So it's about choosing someone who is either a mentor and asking them to disciple you, or vice versa, or you finding someone who is at a spiritual maturity level lesser than yours and mentoring them. I'm going to take a pause because one of the things we haven't done in several months is check to see how many ones and zeros we have. Where are we at?
Yeah, I kind of wondered that.
I'm going to have to talk fast. So you're going to read, and then you each retell what you just read. So we read a passage from James 2:14 through 26, and it goes through all the, is your faith without works and your works without faith, and then, he summarizes it into the, the famous quote, faith without works is dead. And so you would read through that passage and then retell it and summarize it, squeeze it down, and then reflect. So you're saying, we just read this, then we retell it, and then we reflect. So what does it now mean to me? I just told you what it said. Now what does it mean?
Apply it.
And then respond, which is, now that I've read this and understand it better, what am I going to do about it? So from this passage, I wrote down, I need to be looking for more opportunities to do good works, which can range anywhere from helping somebody change a tire on the side of the road to praying for them to praying with them. You name it. Obedience, all the good things. And then next week we will get together and have a review. So we'll say, okay, what'd you get out of that study? And then what did you do this week? And so we'll kind of share our successes and failures. Slight problem with this method is that you have a bunch of people who are all kind of on the same. No. Let me say that again. Slight problem with the way we practiced is we all had people in the room who are roughly on the same spiritual maturity level. So as you have probably already deduced from me being in a room with a bunch of people, it kind of devolved from that into a deeper, more into the weeds discussion about what is a good work and what's a bad work, but
I'm not sure that's a bad thing.
Well, I didn't say it was a bad thing. I said it deviated from the plan. We had a very good discussion, but it did leave the rails for a couple of minutes and got a little weird. And I think had it been in the example that we're practicing for something, right? So it's not supposed to be perfect anyway the first time. If I'm having that conversation with a 17-year-old young man, that conversation would not have gone that way.
Right.
But we start comparing notes and this is what I think, and this is how, I do what I do, and this is what the Hebrew culture says about it works. But, and you get off into the weeds, and, 10 minutes later, everybody's going, what are we doing? And so we're going to keep doing that, I think, for about the next month and kind of hone our skills, and kind of decided that, next week we're also going to mix it back up so we're not with the same group every time. And then probably the mental focus for next week will be, let's remember who we're supposed to be talking to, not who we're talking to. And keep it a little bit simpler and more to the point and more geared toward a person who doesn't understand everything the way we understand. And sometimes the things we understand don't need to be pushed into somebody's head on day one.
True.
The things that I think are fascinating about the Bible, someone who doesn't know the real story of Jonah, for example, ain't going to get, and that's fine.
So we probably shouldn't talk about gematria, which is like all the numbers and everything.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which could have got there pretty quick if we hadn't shut her down. Nero and 666 and all that good stuff. Anything else we want to talk about before we get out of here? We ran out of ones and zeros, so the last minute or two is going to be poor audio quality. So we love you. We will see you next week. Thank you for watching and listening and tolerating the saint and the singer. I'm Andy, and I'm not the saint. I'm the singer.
I'm Sean. I'm not the singer. I'm the saint.
We'll figure this out by the end of February.
2027.
Bye, guys.
Bye.